Let's jump in a time machine and go back 33 years to watch a TV debate about dating. And what's absolutely wild is that the arguments, they sound like they could have been ripped straight from your social media feed today. It's a pretty fascinating look at how long we've been asking the exact same questions about men, women, and how they get along.
You know, it really feels like the internet just kind of invented the modern gender war, doesn't it? But what if I told you that these same exact fights were playing out on daytime television decades ago? Well, that's the big question we're going to dig into.
We're essentially looking at a time capsule from the early 90s. It's this one talk show clip that somehow managed to capture the seeds of today's manosphere, feminist, and men's rights movements, all squished together on one stage. It's a seriously powerful glimpse into where our current conversations really started.
Okay, so here's our game plan. First, we'll set the scene for this 90s debate. Then, we're going to meet the three guys at the center of it all. After that, we'll dive into their main conflict over power, tackle the questions they raised about masculinity, and finally, see how this whole thing looks through a modern lens.
All right, so picture this. It's about 1990, and we're on a talk show hosted by Faith Daniels. And get this, the audience is entirely women, and they are ready to go, ready to challenge the three male guests who all claim they know what women really want.
And now, let's meet our panel. On stage, you've got three men who represent three totally different ways of thinking about dating and gender. You can almost think of them as archetypes. You've got the player, the men's rights activist, and the pro-feminist man.
First up, we have Ross Jeffries. His whole deal is that being the nice guy gets you absolutely nowhere. His philosophy is pretty straightforward. What a woman says she wants and what she actually responds to are two totally different things. He thinks women respond to a challenge, to a certain attitude, a guy who keeps them on their toes.
Next up is Mel Fate, and he's coming from what we'd now call an early men's rights perspective. He basically believes men are powerless in the dating world. He argues that when men even try to express their anger or frustration, they're not taken seriously at all. They're just ridiculed.
And finally, we have Bruce Weinstein, who's coming from the complete opposite side of the universe. He's arguing that men have held all the power for, well, forever. And the only path forward is for men to give up that privilege, to stop talking so much, and actually start listening to women.
So, right here, you can see these competing worldviews laid out side by side. You've got Ross Jeffries saying men need to take power, Mel Fite arguing men have no power, and Bruce Weinstein insisting men need to give up the power they've always had. It's just a perfect storm of conflicting ideas, and it all revolves around this one really slippery concept: power.
And this right here, this brings us to the absolute heart of the conflict. I mean, every single argument on that stage, from dating tips to gender roles, it all boils down to one fundamental question. In the whole dynamic between men and women, who's really holding the cards? Who has the power?
This slide just perfectly sums up the divide. On one side, you have Bruce Weinstein saying, look, men hold all the societal power. But on the other, Ross Jeffries fires back that women control access to sex, which he calls an incredible amount of power that can make men feel totally powerless. It's like they're talking about two completely different currencies of power.
So this huge debate over power, it naturally spins off into an even bigger question, one that we are still fighting about today. What does it actually mean to be a man, and what should modern masculinity even look like?
Well, Bruce Weinstein's answer is that traditional masculinity itself is the problem. He argues that for men to ever be whole, they have to reclaim the feminine sides of themselves that society has taught them to push down and ignore.
Meanwhile, Mel Fate decides to make his point visually by wearing a skirt on national television. It's his way of pointing out what he sees as a huge societal double standard. He's asking, why is it cool and celebrated when women wear men's clothes, but if a man wears a skirt, he's immediately laughed at? It's a direct shot at our rigid ideas of what masculinity is supposed to look like. Okay, so let's hit the fast forward button all the way to today. A modern YouTuber watching this clip 33 years later completely reframes this entire debate through the lens of today's internet culture and gender conversations.
Her analysis brings up some really key points. First, she suggests that the show probably chose these specific guests on purpose to create extreme stereotypes just for good TV. Second, she points out that the women in that audience, well, they're the generation that raised a lot of us, passing these attitudes down. But maybe most importantly, she highlights what's missing from the whole conversation. Nobody mentions family or kids or shared values. The whole thing is framed as a battle. And, funny enough, she notes that both the men's rights guy and the pro-feminist guy both want to redefine masculinity. They just want to pull it in opposite directions. But here's her central argument, and it's a really provocative one. She suggests that while everyone's focused on the pressures put on men, maybe the real shift has been the removal of societal expectations for women, and that's what created this huge imbalance in the dating world.
So, what's the big takeaway from all this? It's that despite 3 decades of massive social change, the internet, everything, we are still circling the exact same questions. The arguments over power, how to define masculinity, the rules of attraction, they're just as heated now as they were on that talk show stage back in the 90s.
And that kind of leaves us with one final question to think about. When you look back at this footage, what does it really tell us about our progress? Are we just screaming the same arguments into new online forums? Or is there maybe a different, more useful conversation that we should be having instead?